Well, I've recently met today's guest, Lauren Winzar, at a recent conference that we went to, the Pop Your Business conference with Beck McFarlane. So we met through a mutual business friend, and Lauren and I got chatting, and I'm really excited to chat with her today about how she does life. Lauren is an organising and decluttering coach. So I want to find out all about how Lauren does life, but also some tips about organising and decluttering. So Lauren, welcome to today's podcast episode.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. And yeah, it was kind of a concert sort of vibe, that conference.
It was a concert vibe, yes. Yes, it was a concert. It was
a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And for those, I might just do a really quick, I don't normally do this, but a quick plug for Pop Your Business and Beck McFarlane, that the conference was really an awesome experience and connecting with people that I hadn't met before. So I love that we had chats, Lauren, and we have some similar approaches, I think, to life and to business.
I think so, yes.
Tell me, what's an organising and decluttering coach, and how did you get into this?
Oh, okay. How did I get into this? I mean, it's kind of a long story, so I'm going to try and cut it a little bit, because it really is a lifetime that's led me here. It's how I've always done life that kind of pushed me, as a kid in school, I was always the kid that had like matching everything. I liked to coordinate my highlighters with my pens, and my folder had to match, and everything needed to be pretty and complementary. And I loved the idea of schedules and timetables and making things perfect.
Yeah,
it was always in my head that it had to be perfect, and if something wasn't working, it was because I needed a better system. I needed something with more structure. I needed more to-dos, and there was a perfect list somewhere, right? There had to be.
And is this right from a kid?
Right from a kid, seriously, very, very young, and I'm sure that there's something going on there.
Yeah, I would think, yeah.
But definitely from quite young, that was who I was, and it didn't always work out so well for me. And as I got older, I had my children. I was only 21 when I had my first child. And so that meant that my plans didn't really go as planned.
Isn't it? How kids and life can throw us some curveballs. And
for sure.
Often those curveballs. Beautiful curveballs, but...
Yes. And because of that, I was then, as quite a young mum, anyone who has had children knows that in those early days, you are all about tracking things and making sure everything's perfect and getting the timing right. And, we become sort of obsessed with things being as they're supposed to be. Right. And also looking for ways to make things easier or get the most out of it or be better in some way. We're looking for that next thing that's going to make all the difference. Yeah. And so I had, I spent most of my time going down rabbit holes trying to, find the planner that will do this, or the new diet that's going to stop my son from being a pain in the ass. Yeah. And, what can I do to be better?
Yeah.
Constantly. And then there's a lot more behind this part of the story, but it's quite heavy and it's not all my story. So I'm just going to go with my mum got quite sick. Yeah. And at one point the decision had to be made to have her move interstate to be closer to our extended family. And I was left to pack up, declutter her whole house.
Oh my gosh, I've got goosebumps. I can feel that, but we'll talk more about, you keep sharing your story. Yes.
That's okay. So mum had a 3-bedroom house with a garage, and it was packed. Now, it wasn't like you would see on TV with like hoarders and stuff. She didn't have piles of newspaper or rotting anything. It was clean. It was just really, really full.
Yeah.
You couldn't see the walls because every wall had a bookshelf on it, the whole wall. Yeah. Every bookshelf was stacked to maximum capacity. And I just don't mean from like left to right. I mean left to right, top to bottom, front to back.
Yeah.
Things were hanging off.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the shelves were actually bowing
Because
with
there was
the
so much
weight.
stuff there. Yeah.
Now, if that's not a metaphor, I don't know what is.
It's powerful, isn't it? It's a powerful, that so much clutter.
So much.
Bowing under the weight and the pressure of so much stuff. So yes, very powerful metaphor.
Exactly. And, you know, despite the fact that everything looked nice, like everything had or appeared to have a place, she actually had multiple copies of some things that she wasn't aware she had. If I opened a cupboard, like out of sight, if I opened a cupboard, it was chaos, utter chaos. Did not make sense to anyone, including her. And I was finding weird things like empty DVD cases, as in the disc wasn't there, nor was the cover. It's just empty, but they were everywhere because she thought she had to keep them just in case. So I'm not equipped to diagnose hoarding, but there's definitely some tendencies that were there. That whole experience, you know, she couldn't take everything with her, and I had to declutter for her and in consultation with her over the phone. And it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard for me, and I could see how hard it was on her. There was a lot of emotion in that. There was a lot of pain in that. And by the end of it, my husband had taken 2 weeks off work to look after our young kids so that I could be there at least 12 hours a day doing this job for 2 weeks. We had a weekend-long garage sale, and I say garage, it was the whole house. We'd packed everything, and then I just opened the doors and I said, come in, you know, take what you want, basically. We donated as much as we could elsewhere, and I still ended up with enough of her clutter back at my house that I felt I needed to keep. So much so we had to build a new shed.
Oh, yeah.
So all of that was very, very stressful, right? It was a lot for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But once that was done and the keys were handed back and I came home, I had this sort of unsettled feeling, like it wasn't anxiety. There was just this energy in me that I had to keep going, like an itch that I couldn't scratch. And I kept decluttering my own stuff. And I started to run out of things to declutter in my house. And I started to bug my friends.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because they'd be talking about having too much, or they were inspired by what I'd been doing. And I was like, I can help you with that. Let me tell you what I've learnt. Because in amongst it all, you know, because I had always, as a child, been interested in productivity and organisation and stuff, I've been absorbing that information my whole life. And then when it comes to these big decluttering for my mother and then for myself, I was absorbing even more information. I'd read anything I could. I listened to as many podcasts as I could. I just sucked it all in.
Yeah.
And then I was just ready to distribute it to anyone who would listen. You cannot shut me up about this stuff. And eventually one of my friends...
evangelist, the decluttering evangelist.
Yeah, a little bit.
I love it. I love that.
Eventually one of my friends was like, I think it might have been her way of saying, leave me alone, I don't want your help. But she did. She did want my help, and we did work out some things for her home that I believe she still uses. But she said, you know, you can charge for this, right? Like people want this. I'm like, no, I'm just tidying up. Like, I'm just throwing stuff out. Like, it's not that hard. But you know what it is? It was hard for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my God. Can I just,
please,
because I know there's more to your story.
No, please.
The thing that I think you know how people come into your life and you connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
What you have just described is similar experience that I've been through, my brothers and I have been through with my father. My father was an only child.
Yeah.
My mum was an only child, and she passed away when I was young. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of her stuff. Then he inherited his parents' stuff. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know what to do with it. And the same sort of thing, like, I'm not diagnosed to, I'm not equipped to diagnose the hoarding, but it was I would say, inverted commas, an illness for Dad. Mm-hmm. The same sort of thing. He had multiple, when we were clearing up, multiples of things that I think that he had just forgotten that he'd had it. And it was a really tough, stressful process with the emotion. It's like, how do you remove things? How do you organize things when we've got our own stuff at home, and give honor to what was important to Dad, but also about how do you go through, because it brought up a whole lot of emotions. And even you talking about it now, it's like, oh,
you can feel it, can't you?
Yeah, but John's mum's just passed, my husband's mum's just passed away recently, and it was a very different experience because there was still a lot of stuff to go through, but she had done a lot of that organizing herself. And there wasn't, for my dad, I think it was a lot of, he had things because it reminded him of the past. He was hanging on to stuff, whereas John's mum was in a very different space and not hanging on. So it was still emotional. So sorry. So I can absolutely feel, and I think our listeners, there will be lots of listeners that I know in my world are going through similar things or about to. So pick up where I cut you off in, you can charge for this.
That starts to get into the idea of it being a business, and which was very exciting. And I mean, I could talk for ages about how I went from just this thing that I love doing to a business that I love doing as well. But I do actually want to go back to talking about your experience there, because you're right, it's not just you. Like, everyone goes through this at some point. To one degree or another, we all have to deal with the loss of a person. And okay, to be fair, my mum has not passed, but I did have to go through a grieving process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is so much more to that story that is just not the time or place. But there's a process that is sort of gaining a lot of popularity, especially in the aging population, called Swedish death cleaning.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So that might be what your mother-in-law has done.
Do you want to explain that? Because I'm familiar with that. Some of our listeners may not be. Do you want to...
So, well, at its rawest, it's essentially accepting that at some point you're going to die, and you don't want to leave the crap in your home for someone else to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's considered a responsibility and a kindness to your next of kin that they don't have to question every tiny little thing you own. Yeah. You know, there are some people who do treasure the tiniest little things, and that's okay. You treasure whatever works, like whatever means something to you is a treasure. But, you know, I've got heaps of stuff. I'm not a minimalist. I have heaps of stuff that I love, that I find beautiful, but I don't care one way or another if anyone keeps it after I'm gone. It's there for my enjoyment, and that's it.
Oh, I love hearing that. I love hearing that you've got a lot of stuff, because I think sometimes we think, people who are organised and decluttering experts, that they don't have anything in their house. But it's what you've said there is about the meaning that it has for you, and it has for you.
Yes.
It's not about the pressure for kids to do stuff. Actually, there's a company, I'll keep that in my mind for a minute, because I want to ask you about some of that term that you mentioned to me about heirloom decluttering. And that's exactly what we've been going through. My grandmother, some 20 years ago, in the lead up to her passing away, she very practical, and she would go through all the important things in her house, like all the teacups, and she would say, I was given this by so-and-so on my 21st birthday. I want this one to go to you. I want these ones to go to your brothers. And, even though we kind of think we really want them, but the thing for me was that she was able to share that meaning about what they are. Some of the things that I'm going through with Dad, I'm not sure what, it's kind of like that stuff that looks nice.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's come from. I don't know if that's a thing of importance or not.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the question then is, okay, even if it did hold some importance to Dad, if he didn't tell you about it, and if neither you nor any of your siblings or anyone else close to him has any connection to it, it doesn't hold that meaning anymore.
So what do you do with this stuff? Like, we've given some away, we've marketplaced stuff. What do you do with photos, Lauren? What do you do with family photos that look like they're historical? I mean, they are 1800, and you go, who the freak is that in the photo? Gone
Yeah,
wrong.
well, there's all sorts of things you can do with it. Firstly, I want to say that you can actually throw them out. A lot of people are going to go, oh, can't do that. Because, like, similar with books, if you see a really old book or a really old photograph, you're like, wow, that must have some significance.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, old books and photos, they weren't cheap. They weren't easy to get. They're rare, right? So we feel like we can't get rid of them. With something like books, yeah, you can donate them, you can give them to libraries. There are definitely things you can do, but photos are really hard because they only mean something to the people in the photos or the people who knew those people.
Yeah.
You know, I can even see a photo of like my great-great-grandmother, assuming one exists. My great-grandmother, I've definitely seen photos of, and I can guess who she is based on who the other people are in the photo, and maybe somebody's once upon a time told me a story about this particular photograph. But really, as sad as it might seem, it really doesn't mean anything to me, you know?
Yeah.
I can't tell you anything about her. And that is really a hard pill to swallow because we want to think that our lives are important.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we're leaving some sort of legacy and that people are going to care about us long after we die.
Yeah.
You know what? Some of us, that might be true. And some of us might have amazing families that will continue our stories forever. They're going to get twisted. They're not going to remember us exactly as we are. They're just not. And if you pick up a photograph that you found in your dad's stuff and you don't know any of the people in there, and you can ask your brother and he'll say, no idea. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
one thing I think there, I get that, and I really like hearing that. Part of me goes, these are old photos. They possibly have some, maybe you've just answered that. Maybe they're talking a historical importance.
Yeah.
If I throw it out, am I making a decision on something? I don't know where that's.
So are you denying somebody else something in some way? Well, potentially, but it's very unlikely that anyone's ever going to not notice. Like if you don't know who it is, nobody's going to come knocking on your door one day and say, you will have a photo from, 1820 of this person who I've just tracked down through Ancestry or something. Like, it's one of those things that if you find it and you understand it, it can be really cool, but it's very unlikely that anyone's going to come looking for it. So if you would like it to go somewhere that it's going to be useful, you can talk to historical societies in the area that they maybe grew up in. Yeah. So a lot of local libraries are connected to historical societies. If you have a photograph that you think might be related to some sort of war effort or a particular event, local museums like to have those kind of things. It's especially handy if you've got, in grandma's writing on the back, some sort of details, because even if those details mean nothing to you, they might help the people in the historical society. And people who do that kind of thing really love the sort of mystery solving aspect. They might recognize a uniform or a face or a sign in the background and connect it to something else. Yeah. And then you might be able to find out a little bit about it, which is really cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep it in your possession forever and ever and ever.
And that's what I think, that's what I really love hearing there. And what, for me, it's taking a lot of energy in going, I don't know what the freak to do with this. I don't want to, if I dispose of it, I mean, I could quite easily throw them out, burn them. Yeah. There's a part of me that goes, I don't want to do that. But for me, it's about moving them on because the energy of them being here, for me, is a stuck energy. And that would be something that you would experience a lot, isn't it? That
so often
what the benefits of decluttering actually are.
Yeah. So that's stuck energy. Like, okay, we were talking before we hit record. I'm in my bedroom recording because this is where we get the best sound. And at the moment, my bedroom is not neat and tidy. I have piles of notebooks because I'm in the middle of a project. Yeah. I have another pile of things that came out of my suitcase when we came back from holiday and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And that's what clutter is. It's unmade decisions, right? It's I'm putting this here for now and I'll get back to it later. And later's kind of a generic sometime between now and forever. You know, there's no set time, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of overwhelming, stuck feeling like I can't use this space for what I intended because this is in my way. Now, clutter is something between me now and what I want to do. Yeah. So the stuff you're going through with your father's stuff and your mother-in-law's stuff, you know, it's not necessarily that you dislike it, but it's not contributing to your life and it's actually getting in your way. And that's true whether it's sitting on front of your desk and like you couldn't see the camera right now, that's in your way. But it's also in your way if it's in the garage and you can't park the car anymore, because then you're not using that space the way you intended. You don't have to see it for it to be clutter. Yeah. And I feel like I might have lost your question in there.
No, but what you know, you're exactly, because I was talking about moving it on and that stuck energy.
Moving it on, yes.
So about things being in the clutter. I loved what you said there about clutter equates to unmade decisions.
Yeah.
And for me, the energy, so there's physical clutter, there's the mental clutter, and the emotional. So things that we're hanging on to that are getting in the way of where we want to be.
Yeah. And you and I actually touched on this a little bit when we were speaking in person, because so I got into this in terms of the physical clutter. Like there were physical things standing in the way of myself and the people in my life. Those are relatively easy to deal with. They're not easy. They're still hard. We've just discussed how some of them, like heirloom clutter, is really hard. Really hard. But it's hard to get rid of anything. Everything came into your home for a reason. You know, so it's hard to get rid of it. It's lots and lots of decisions. I often use the example of like a receipt. You know, a receipt is one tiny scrap of paper, right?
Yeah.
But if I pick up a receipt and I think, do I need to keep this? Firstly, I need to look at where did it come from? How old is it? Do I need to return that item? Do I need it for tax? Do I need it for insurance? Do I need it for, I don't know, a million other things? That's like, it's like 10 questions already on one piece of paper.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with 1,000 questions on 1,000 different objects in our house? That's complicated. But that is so much easier than dealing with the emotional clutter that has been built up inside us our entire lives. Like we started by saying that I needed everything to be perfect. There is some clutter going on in there that I am still dealing with. There's been clutter in my head, as there is in everyone's. There's the stories we've been told, there's the stories we tell ourselves, there's the negative thoughts, there's just the flat out lies. There's all sorts of stuff. And that is hard to deal with because you can't see it. You can't hold it up and say, do I need this for tax purposes? You don't.
But what you can do is, how is this benefiting me in life?
You've got to be able to see it first, don't you? You have to be able to recognize that it's there. And so often we're not even aware of the clutter that's happening in our minds, in our emotions. So that is definitely something that has taken me a bit longer to deal with than the physical stuff. But by learning how to deal with the physical clutter, it started to open up space physically and mentally for me to recognize the patterns I see in my own life, in my head or in my behavior. And I can talk to myself as though it's an object. I can pick out, this is a pattern I'm seeing. Why? Why did that come into my life in the first place? Do I still need to keep it? What can I do with it now? It is a more complicated process, but it is the same process.
I think it's the same.
I
think there are elements that are the same, and it's about the stuff that's in the way of where we want to be, and the stuff, it can be physical, mental, emotional, a whole range of things. And it's recognizing also the energy that it takes with that stagnant stuff that we're not doing anything with, the unmade decisions, the things that are just sitting there. To me, that's stagnant energy. And for us to move forward in life, we need to actually
clear it,
some movement and clear it. And I know when I have a lot of stuff, like I have a lot of stuff in my house too, and would like to remove some of that. But when it's all out of place, I feel overwhelmed, and it's almost like a reflection of my thinking.
Mhm.
It's like when my house is really messy, untidy, so are my thoughts. My thoughts are kind of all over the place. So sometimes the clearing up can help my thoughts to get clearer.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting my thoughts a little bit clearer can also help with the physical.
Absolutely. I find it kind of has to happen hand in hand, because if you focus too much on I must clear this space, you're kind of blocking yourself from clearing your mental space, right? So you've got to do both. You do a little bit out on the external and a little bit on the internal. Sometimes they happen at the same time. Like while I'm doing, like you can do it as a mindfulness activity. While I'm washing the dishes, I'm also clearing away negative thoughts, or like you can consciously choose it that way. But for a lot of my clients and my students, it sort of comes more accidentally than that. Like they've found that they've focused first, like this part's really important. I must clear my kitchen bench. Like that's where I'm starting. So they clear that kitchen bench, and then they can stop and breathe. And suddenly these new ideas about other things that have been bothering them, but they couldn't really pinpoint, that sort of
it kind of
clearer.
opens up the next bit for them.
So then they can work on something new or not new, but something that they've just noticed. So new to them. They can work through that. They can journal it out. They can talk it out with a group. They can move on, like they can declutter those thoughts, right? And then they have the mental energy again to go back and do the next part of their home. And it just becomes this wonderful cycle. And it is a cycle because there's no finish line.
I agree.
There's no finish line. Like I said, my house, like at the moment, it's not perfect, but I do know what I need to do to get it back the way I like it. And like you said, the longer I leave it messy, the more complicated my head is going to get. And I'm going to start to make mistakes that I haven't made in a long time. You know, I'm going to start to forget things. I'm going to start to lose things. I'm going to start to get frustrated and snappy and all of these things that seemed normal once upon a time. And they're normal for a lot of people to be, you know, short-tempered, to be forgetful, to be late, just to be overwhelmed and stressed all the time. That's actually not normal, and it doesn't need to be that way. You know?
There were two things that popped into my mind. I can remember one of them, and one of them was about decluttering became kind of trendy with the Marie Kondo, you know, process, you know, Marie Kondo. I find that process a bit restrictive for me. And what I loved when we were chatting off air is you said whatever works for the person.
Exactly.
Tell me more about that, because that appeals to me.
So I very much think that, okay, it's kind of like diets. Okay, everyone has been on a diet at some point. Everyone has had diets. I was
just speaking for a friend.
I mean, if you lived it all through the 90s, you know that diets were life, right? You were always on some kind of crazy restrictive diet. And fortunately, that kind of culture is shifting now, which is wonderful. But every diet works for somebody.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that there is a diet that works for everybody, because there's not.
Yeah.
You know, you and I could eat exactly the same food. We could do exactly the same movement, and we're still going to have completely different body sizes, shapes, whatever. There is not a single diet that will work for everyone. The same is true for, well, frankly, I believe everything.
Yeah, I do too.
Everything. If something's not working for you, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're not doing it right. It means that wasn't the way for you.
Love it.
So when the Marie Kondo books came out, I did read the first one quite early on, and I found it a little bit cultish. I did enjoy it. There were a lot of points in there that I found very useful, and I still use with some clients, because some of those points do work for some people. But I tried to follow the whole thing myself. I was like, I can't teach this to people if I don't know it myself. I did some of it thoroughly. Like I did the whole get every single piece of clothing you own out and throw it on the bed. Get every single book you own and put it on the floor in front of you. I did it. I followed her rules to the letter, because, you know, I really like to find a perfect system. And if it were perfect, I would be here promoting it. But to me, it was a little too prescriptive.
Yes.
I liked the idea of how it makes you feel. You know, it's become quite a meme, the sparks joy.
And
but I like it.
I like that too.
That works really well for me.
That works for me, yeah.
But overall, this is what you must start with and this is how it must go. And then she kind of had some backlash a couple of years ago when she created a store with some very high-priced items in it, because everyone saw her as a minimalist and you shouldn't have these unnecessary things and expensive stuff is, unnecessary. Yeah. But to her credit, it was totally on brand for her because they were things that were very, very high quality that spark joy for her.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to spark joy for anybody else.
Yeah.
You don't need several $100s on a singing bowl unless you really love singing bowls and this one makes the perfect sound for you. Yeah. Owning the singing bowl, not going to bring you joy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's so true, isn't it? And I think for me, being so prescriptive, and I find that also with like my coaching practice and with my clients, I'm very much about you do you.
Yeah.
Actually, my daughter said this to me, oh God, I don't know when, however many years ago, she said, Mum, you do you, I'll do me. It's like,
love it.
Good on you. Yes. And that's kind of the philosophy in my coaching is about, be authentic to who you are. Mm-hmm. Don't do what works for you in life. Yeah. That there are some things that bring joy for you in life. There are some things that don't. Then you do that. It's not up to me into being prescriptive in what you should do. And I do, while we're on that a little bit, I do have a few challenges with some coaches that have very structured approach, but that works for some of their clients, I guess, as well. So it's about, so I resonate with what you're saying there about what works for the individuals.
Absolutely.
And you as a coach can kind of tap into that and then help the individuals to tap into their motives as well.
That's right, because there is no one size fits all. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so what, like I was saying, like a diet, go on.
You go. Did you want to finish what you were going to say there?
I was just saying, it's what works for you is not necessarily going to work for me, but we can share information. I can say, this is what worked for me and this is what somebody suggested, but it didn't sit right for me because. So I can learn from your experience. I can learn from your mistakes. And then I can discuss mine with you and maybe we both come out with a little more, You tell me that this didn't work for you because X, Y, Z. And I'm like, whoa, but that would actually really work. That's work. I'll give it a go. Yeah. And, in my courses, in my teaching, I talk about declutter, DCLTR, dream, curate, learn, try, and reset.
Oh, beautiful.
And the really important one there is reset.
Yeah.
If we just keep heading towards the exact same goal all the time and keep trying the same thing that we learnt before, you're going to find yourself getting stuck. You're going to start beating yourself up because, I read the book that everyone said was like the be all and end all, and the book promises that this will be a once and done and I'll never have to do it again. Yeah. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. The only reason you're ever going to have to stop dealing with your stuff is when you're dead.
Yeah, no, I absolutely 100% agree. And it's interesting that we approach, really, you and I are about helping people to,
find their own
life and, and be the best versions of themselves. And you do it through a decluttering lens. I do it through a finding joy and happiness lens.
Yeah.
The first part in a Happiness for Life framework that I share with my clients is to create space for new beginnings. And it's about,
how do we do that?
Really, it's about look at what you've got. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What's getting in the way of you being where you want to be? And getting rid of some of that old stuff and old beliefs, old patterns, old things.
Yep.
Things that aren't working for you. So really we're talking about
same thing,
but we're doing it through different lenses, which is almost modeling what we're talking about, which is kind of super cool as well.
Yeah.
Super
cool.
Because
if starting with the what makes me happy, well, if you don't know, if you don't know what makes you happy, and there are some people who don't, I know I didn't for a very long time.
Yeah.
If you don't know what makes you happy, okay, so let's start with what's in your way.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to know. Like you said, you need to know where you're getting to figure
It's
out.
kind of like, where are I? Where am I? Where are I? Where am I? And where would I want to be in some things? Can I, the other thing that I had thought of and forgotten and then thought of again is you mentioned about on that quest for being perfect.
Yeah.
Tell me more about perfectionism, because I think a lot of our listeners will relate. They might not want to be, they might be closet perfectionists.
Yeah.
What does being a perfectionist mean for you, and how does that show up in your life?
It shows up a lot less now than it used to. It's funny, when you said that, I sort of had a quick spin back to very early university. I studied economics, and one of my early, I know I get that look a lot.
Interesting. Yeah. I love it.
One of my very early economics professors said, it was basically trying to weed out those that fit in the course and those that were not going to get it.
Yeah.
And they said, you're not just a perfectionist, you're like anally retentive.
Oh.
And the not the literal meaning, but the psychological meaning. Psychological meaning is, if I can't get it perfect, I'm not going to do it at all. Okay, and that's where we end up with clutter.
Oh my God, tell me more about that. I've got a client at the moment that has held herself back because they're almost the words that she said. If I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the concept, so when he said that he said it to the class, but it was definitely to me. right at me. If I can't get it perfect, I'm just not going to try. The problem with that is you're not going to get anywhere, because nothing is perfect. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a perfect place. You can't, like, I mean, I wanted to plan a barbecue for last weekend, but the weather didn't look good, so I didn't do it. Weather was bloody perfect, and
oh my God,
I put it off. I put it off.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you know something is definitely not going to work, like I'm not going to plan a barbecue when the forecast is for like a snowstorm or something, that would be stupid. But if I'm just going to avoid starting my business, or avoid throwing something out, or avoid tidying my room right now because I don't have time to finish the whole thing, I'm never going to get on top of it. Yeah. So a smaller, maybe easier to understand for everyone idea would be the dishes, right? Yeah. We all eat, we all make dishes, like dirty dishes. We need to clean them so that they're ready for our next meal, right? Yeah. If you have a meal and, say there's 4 people in your family, you've got 4 plates, 4 forks, 4 knives, whatever pots and pans you used to cook with, and you put them on the side of the bench and you go, I don't have time to do that right now. Yeah. Well, by the next time you look at it, you've had another meal and there's twice as much to do. Yeah. And you definitely don't have time to do 2 loads of dishes right now. So if you wait until the end of the day and you've got last night's dinner, you've got this morning's breakfast, you've got the kids' lunch boxes, it all piles up. You really have to dedicate a huge chunk of time to getting these dishes done, right? Whereas if you stop in the morning and go, I don't have time to do all of it, but I can definitely put some of that in the dishwasher. Yeah. Or I can wash just the glasses. Or I can rinse 1 cup. Like, it doesn't matter. If you do a little bit, then you've got a little bit less to do later. Yeah. And then you don't have this mounting pile. If you say, I don't have time to clean my room, well, yeah, you probably don't, because it's been months. And it's
months because you've left it, yeah.
Because you've left it. So, yeah, you're not going to have time. Yeah. But if you keep putting it off, it's never, ever going to get done. And I think I know the book you just picked up.
I've just got that Progress Over Perfection. Have you got it there too? Yeah. So Emma Norris, little shout out to Emma, who was at the conference. But to me, that's my philosophy. And what I was also going to mention there too, Lauren, is Mel Robbins about the 5-second rule. Yes. About just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. Yep. Like that, for me, that's been a huge game changer, is to do a little bit. Yeah. And it's about not having to get it right all in one bit. Mm-hmm. It's about progress is better than perfection.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is a very nice summary of it, progress over perfect. And there's many ways of looking at it, just a little bit. And I do go through this often with clients as well. It's like, we don't have to do it all now, but we're just going to do some of it. And my best example of success with that is my kids. So both of my kids are autistic.
Yeah.
And my daughter especially really struggles with being given a direction and then sticking to it. So at her worst, I can't even tell her, go to your room, grab your shoes and bring back your school bag, because that's too many things.
Too many,
Too many words, too much input. I say shoes. And she's like, right, got it. She can do shoes. But if I send her to brush her teeth and get into her pajamas, she'll come out half an hour later with like roller skates on.
Yeah.
What happened? Because she got to her room and she couldn't remember anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to pick up her room for her entire life. In fact, I wasn't prepared to do it when she was 5. I'm like, if your arms work and your feet work, you can do this.
Love it.
I am a very lazy person, Catherine. I'm really lazy, and I don't want to change that. I quite like lazy. So that means somebody else has got to do it if at all possible. Yeah. So for my daughter, I recognised that she liked repetition. What kids don't like, a bit of a song and a dance. And so I basically just started chanting to her like a cheerleader. Yeah. Pick something up.
Yeah.
Where does it go?
Yeah.
And then, okay, what next? And I can get really like play school pigtails annoying with this kind of thing. I can repeat that on loop for however long it takes. Now, okay, to be fair, she's nearly 11.
Yeah.
For years, I haven't had to go beyond pick something up. Because if I say it like that, she knows the trigger.
For her.
Yeah. And I mean, she's not perfect. None of us are. But most people who have seen her room are confused by the fact that I am saying that she needs more help.
Mm.
Because by most people's standards, pretty good for a 10-year-old girl.
But you know what I hear there, Lauren, is that you understand your daughter and her needs, and you've been able to adapt and help her to be able to do things herself. And still needs some support and guidance. And that's, I guess, if we bring that back to the organising and decluttering, the process there is the same for people that maybe do feel overwhelmed. And as we've talked about in this chat, it can be tough. It can be really tough. And for some people that do feel really overwhelmed and not even sure where to start, having independent eyes, I think, is a great assistance to be able to help people to navigate that experience, that journey. And whether it's the heirloom decluttering or just general what you've got going on in your own life, I think that's a great support. Before we end up, I just want to, because there's been lots of tips kind of woven through here. What would you say your top 3 are in relation to decluttering and organising? Do you have a top 3 or not?
Yeah, off the top of my head, number 1, definitely just start where you can with as little as you can, like we were just saying. And that chant that I do for my daughter, I shared that during lockdown on a Facebook Live, like as an off the cuff, hadn't really planned to add it in. I had so many messages about that. I even had one woman who messaged me to tell me that her husband had overheard it in the background and she had caught him singing it to himself as he tidied the kitchen. And he never tidies the kitchen.
So can you repeat it again? Repeat the chant.
Hang on, I'll do it as annoying as I can. You go, pick something up. Where does it go? Okay, what's next?
Beautiful.
Yeah. The more annoying and like Elmo-ish you are, the better, I think. It really gets stuck in your head that way. My next tip would be it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
So ask for help.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling supported by the family or people in your home or something like that, if you feel judged, if you're not feeling good about your decluttering or organizing efforts, then they're not the right support for you.
Yes.
And you need to look for
I think
something
that's
else.
lovely. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's the same with any support in your life.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel right, don't just do it because somebody said do it.
Yeah.
And don't do it if you feel that you're being judged or, and this isn't just the decluttering.
Not anything.
I think it's anything.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're not feeling supported, you're not getting support. Yeah. So ask for help. You can ask for a coach. You can, call Catherine or myself, ask for a coach. You can outsource. Almost anything can be outsourced. So that I'm a huge fan of outsourcing. Whatever will get something off my plate is a win. So yeah, asking for help, start where you are. Oh, and try and enjoy it. Make it as fun as possible. Just
yes, I would, because it can be a bit of a slog and a chore depending on what the process of it is. And do what I really like hearing too is about really practical tips, like just do what you can do and don't put pressure on yourselves. Don't expect that you have to have it perfect. As we said, progress is better than perfect. And just get in and have a go and do it. So where can people find you, Lauren? Where can they find you?
I'm a bit everywhere. I think the best place is usually Instagram. All the newest stuff goes to Instagram first. So I'm just at Lauren Winzar, and Winzar is WINZAR.
Yeah, and we've got that in the show notes if people want to follow that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also find me on Facebook, my website, which is just laurenwinzar.com.au, and just reach out to me. I'm a normal human person. You can send me a DM or text message or something, and we'll figure out what's going on for you and how I might be able to help you.
Oh, that would be awesome, Lauren. And there's so much that, there's so much we covered and so much that we didn't cover, but people, I would 100% suggest follow Lauren for tips, and also just to reach out and ask for advice if you feel that you want some advice around it. Some people don't. Some people have got this all sorted, and that's completely cool as well.
Oh, in which case, send me some advice. Even if I don't need it. I'm always looking for ideas for other people. If you've found the perfect way to do something, I'm happy to admit I was wrong and there is a perfect way. Let me know.
Yeah, same. So, Lauren, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for
having me. Happiness
me.
to you, and we'll see you around.